Hello there and welcome to the Richie Allen Show in association with BeyondVision.tv. Got to say that right, BeyondVision.tv and DavidIke.com. How are you? It is Friday, December the 4th, 2015. Thanks for watching the programme. Lots to tell you, he normally says. Today, we're going to start and finish in one place, and that is the news that this week the British government secured the votes at Westminster to extend their bombing campaign in Iraq against the Islamic State, or Daesh, or whatever they're calling them, to extend those bombing raids into Syria. We're saying it's war, because it is. They're saying it isn't. Don't call it that. It's airstrikes against targeted areas. It's not the same as war. We're strategically targeting the evil monsters, Daesh or Islamic State or whatever they're calling them, as I said, this week. But intriguingly enough, shortly after they secured the vote, or the votes on Wednesday, in fact it was about an hour afterwards, that they began their sorties. They love this language, don't they? Sorties. It's all very homogenised. There's a word for you. Killing people is what it really is. They came back to us on Thursday morning, the BBC and Sky News and all the rest of them, and they said that they were successful raids made by those RAF Tornado jets, and that they had targeted an oil field near Deir ez-Zor, and that these were really effective raids. Now, Hayden Hewitt, I'm bringing you in early. I'm calling you off the bench early. Were we or were we not briefed by the Pentagon earlier this year to say that they'd basically obliterated that oil field?
Well, we've not had time to research this, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I recall quite clearly that that place was well and truly flattened before.
By the Americans.
But we've gone in and done it properly.
We've gone in and done it properly. Thanks, mate. More from you shortly. So somebody is lying through their teeth. Right? Check it out, folks. Check it out. Deir, D-E-I-R, ez-Zor, E-Z-Z-O-R, oil field not far from Raqqa. Am I right in saying that? Not far from Raqqa.
I think it's got to be in that.
Yeah, it's around that general region. The US basically said in one of their many briefings after they began bombing in Syria that they had obliterated it. Liars! Every one of them. The night before the vote, an increasingly desperate Prime Minister, David Cameron, called people like Jeremy Corbyn, people like Andy Burnham and others terrorist sympathisers, because they were going to walk the lobbies with Jeremy Corbyn. It's a sexy way of saying they were going to vote with Corbyn. We'll come back to that, because there isn't much media talk about that. There was a little bit when he said it, but nobody has really dwelled on it or come back or gotten into it in any serious way. I've never been a member of a political party, never, in my life. And the last time I voted was in the Irish general election of 2002. Would have been in June 2002, not long before I left WLR FM in Waterford. As a journalist, I have my contacts and I have my sources in all parties. And I am being reliably informed that Labour Party members in Great Britain, up and down the country, are reeling in shock at this.
As a party, we have always been defined by our internationalism. We believe we have a responsibility one to another. We never have, and we never should, walk by on the other side of the road. And we are here faced by fascists. Not just their calculated brutality, but their belief that they are superior to every single one of us in this chamber tonight, and all of the people that we represent. They hold us in contempt. They hold our values in contempt. They hold our belief in tolerance and decency in contempt. They hold our democracy, the means by which we will make our decision tonight, in contempt. And what we know about fascists is that they need to be defeated. And it is why, as we have heard tonight, socialists and trade unionists and others joined the International Brigade in the 1930s to fight against Franco. It's why this entire House stood up against Hitler and Mussolini. It is why our party has always stood up against the denial of human rights and for justice. And my view, Mr. Speaker, is that we must now confront this evil. It is now time for us to do our bit in Syria.
Rewind to Sunday, November the 15th, 2015, which is only a couple of weeks ago. And Hilary Benn gave an exclusive interview to the Sunday Independent where he said there was no way that he was going to support airstrikes inside Syria. No way. Because that sort of thing, said Benn, that sort of action had previously in other countries left a vacuum for these guys to move into. Benn said quite clearly to the Sunday Independent that it was best to sort out the Syrian civil war peacefully and diplomatically before dealing with Islamic State. What changed his mind, do you think? Dear viewer, I wonder. Eh? Has anybody asked him? Did Jeremy Corbyn have the balls to look at him? Do you know what I would have done if I was Corbyn? Sitting behind him. This was the last speech given around about 10 minutes to 10 on Wednesday night. If I was Corbyn, I would have risked ridicule by stopping him mid-flow. You do realise that when they make these speeches, you are allowed to intervene and they do give way. And I would have said, why'd you change your mind, Hilary? Anything you're not telling us, Hilary? We might come back to that. You won't be surprised. In fact, you will know by now that Yvette Cooper and Liz Kendall, who campaigned for the Labour leadership and stood against Corbyn, but were obliterated by Corbyn in the Labour leadership contest. You won't be surprised to learn is that they voted for the bombing. All the old Blairites. What fools we are! We'll hear more from Tony Benn in a minute. A wonderful cry from Tony Benn in 1998. What fools we are. I say to you today, what fools we are to believe in a democracy. Hundreds of thousands of Labour supporters around the country said they had enough of the lies and the criminality of Tony Blair and his cronies and Alistair Campbell and Spin and all that nonsense and the Chilcot inquiry. They said we've had enough of a one-party state. We want change. We want real opposition. So they voted in Jeremy Corbyn. More on that in a minute. Back to Hilary Benn. You think he's old man, legendary conviction politician and genuine dyed in the wool socialist Tony Benn. Do you think by any chance Tony Benn is spinning in his grave? Have a look at this.
Uniform. But I was in London in the Blitz in 1940, living in the Millbank Tower where I was born. Some different ideas have come in since. And every night I went down to the shelter in Thames House. Every morning I saw Dockland burning. 500 people were killed in Westminster one night by a landmine. It was terrifying. Aren't Arabs terrified? Aren't Iraqis terrified? Don't Arab and Iraqi women weep when their children die? Doesn't bombing strengthen their determination? What fools we are to live in a generation for which war is a computer game for our children and just an interesting little Channel 4 news item. Every member of Parliament tonight who votes for the government motion will be consciously and deliberately accepting the responsibility for the deaths of innocent people if the war begins, as I fear it will.
Yeah, that is Jeremy Corbyn sitting behind him. That sort of passion from the anti-bombing brigade, conspicuous by its absence on Wednesday of this week. Do you think that's low? Do you think that's below the belt? Nasty? I couldn't give a damn. The slings and arrows. How could you grow up with Tony Benn and vomit forth that diatribe? They hate our democracy. They hate this house. They hold us in contempt. Nonsense. We've heard it all before. Take a look at George Bush shortly after the attacks on September the 11th, 2001.
We have seen their kind before. They are the heirs of all the murderous ideologies of the 20th century. By sacrificing human life to serve their radical visions, by abandoning every value except the will to power, they follow in the path of fascism, Nazism, and totalitarianism, and they will follow that path all the way to where it ends, in history's unmarked grave of discarded lies.
We didn't add in the cheesy music, by the way. It's an old script dusted down on Wednesday by Hilary Benn. Shamelessly, it was lapped up by the media and applauded by people like Adam Bolton and Laura Kunsberg at the BBC. They're describing it as the speech of a generation. Trevor Kavanagh, one of the editors at the Sun newspaper, saying this hair was standing on the back of his neck listening to Ben. Bollocks. Bollocks. There was nothing in that speech that we haven't heard before. Hayden Hewitt, do you really imagine that there are terrorists sitting down eating their black beans and rice somewhere in Afghanistan or in Iraq or in Syria saying, as I said on the radio show this week, hey Samir, remind me again, why do we hate them? We hate their freedoms.
Well, that's it. And what I'm confused by is, the freedom's have been getting eroded quite a lot lately. So why aren't they sitting there eating the black beans, looking at us going,
loving
you know what? I love them guys.
Love it.
You got no freedom, love them.
Love them. David Cameron is labelling anybody who disagrees with him as a threat to national security.
That's me.
That's us.
Well, David Cameron's going to push through, all the draconian legislation that he has to push through, and yeah, we're for it. No, the hate you for freedoms thing, we could get into the whole religious difference, cultural difference, day and night. Maybe that's a part on the lower tier soldiers, in that part of the world. Yeah, we hate them because they're against.
Or it's just a narrative spun to convince the television generation that there really are people who hate your freedoms.
Even if the lower foot soldiers did hate us because of freedoms, which I can't see it's freedoms.
Nonsense, yeah.
It doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything at all. But it's a great thing to spin because it's easy. And that's why they hate us. Freedoms, guns, peanut butter.
Spot on, mate. It's too simple. I've not said much about Jeremy Corbyn. I said it all during the week. I don't hate the man. I don't dislike him. I don't have anything against him. I said when he was elected, so did Hayden Hewitt, so did David Icke and others. It was nice to hear a guy standing at the dispatch box and actually disagreeing with the government about taxation. It was nice. Did say at the time, though, he would change nothing. He couldn't do. The system is poisoned, corrupt, it's filthy, it's bent. It is fucked every which way from Sunday. His speech was shocking in its lack of passion. I exchanged emails with a number of people in the media while he was speaking at the dispatch box early or just before Wednesday lunchtime, just after David Cameron had finished. And it was one of the worst speeches I had ever heard in my life. Worse still was the lack of courage in Corbyn's speech. After Cameron had called him and anybody else who disagreed with Cameron's wanting to visit more death and destruction on the people of Syria, after Cameron had called anybody who was against that a terrorist sympathiser, why didn't Corbyn call for his resignation? Over the top, Richie? Well, no. It's one of the most heinous statements ever made by a sitting Prime Minister. It's completely unacceptable and should be fatal to David Cameron, fatal to his career and fatal to the vote on Wednesday. But after quietly asking him to apologise, Corbyn moved on. Instead of saying, I want to table a motion, a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister. Not from the opposition benches, but from his own party. How can you say that? It's a tyranny to say that. Corbyn moved on. My critics say, not that I'm important, but I have a few critics, which is nice, that he did mention the arming of ISIS and he did talk about Turkey. Corbyn did. He did, briefly. He mumbled and stuttered his way through it. Why didn't he table another motion to suspend the vote pending an investigation into the allegations that an ally, a NATO ally, Turkey, Tayyip Erdogan, it's Erdogan, by the way. I've heard your podcast. It's Erdogan.
Oh, you can't fault me for trying.
No, it's good. It's a good effort. And to be fair, I had to listen. I had to listen to him calling himself Erdogan. It is Erdogan. This guy's a NATO ally. And his family are turning into Ewing oil in front of our eyes. making tens of millions of dollars buying oil. Oh, Jesus Christ. I can't believe I'm saying it. We know it to be true. So why didn't Corbyn say it then? Oh, he's scared, Richie. Corbyn is scared of being labelled a conspiracy theorist. He's doing his best. No, he's not. He's not. Prime Minister, I am urging my party to ignore the vote today pending an investigation into the allegations that the Turks are buying oil for half its value in return for weapons and money. It would have brought the house down. But he didn't, did he, Corbyn? I'll tell you more about that in a second. This is the Richie Allen Television Show in association with BeyondVision.tv and DavidIke.com. After the break, I will tell you more about how and why we know the Turks are doing this, and we will talk about censorship and more besides. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back. You're with the Richie Allen Television Show in association with BeyondVision.tv and DavidIke.com. Check out BeyondVision.tv and do go to the BVTV YouTube channel and subscribe, because that's where we upload these shows. And there's a lot happening with BeyondVision.tv. I want you to pay attention to the website. A lot of news about future projects there and about the future of the channel in general. All of that coming your way in the next couple of weeks. DavidIke.com/headlines. Go to richieallen.co.uk for information on my radio show, which airs Monday to Thursday, live at 8 p.m. GMT. LiveLeak.com, of course, for the Live Leak show, Thursdays at 10:30 p.m. GMT. That's terrific as well. We're independent, guys like us. We're espousing and we are emoting independent opinions, completely independent of anybody else. And that's what's special, not about us, we're not special. That's what's special about the concept. It's terrific, so do support it. BeyondVision.tv. And again, a big thanks to David Icke for his unwavering support of everybody in the independent media. He spends all of his time supporting independent media projects by sharing their videos on his huge website, davidike.com. Thanks to him for that. Michel Aoun is the former Prime Minister of Lebanon. He is amongst many commentators, political figures past and present, outing the Turkish authorities this week for basically keeping ISIS on the road. Have a look at Michel Aoun.
Speaking of Turkey's role in the fight against terrorism, I don't know for certain if they still carry on with what they started with. But it was Ankara that was reinforcing the front line with radical terrorists. It seems to me this turned out to be the root of the conflict of interests. It is impossible to succeed in neither a military nor a political solution of the Syrian conflict when one of the neighboring states openly fuels the war and is instigating others to drop the political solution.
Erdogan, he said, openly fuels the war and wants to drop the political solution. Of course he did. And speaking of plugs, Hayden Hewitt makes a audio podcast, which I stream on Wednesday nights. Last night I streamed, it was Thursday this week because of some messing around because of the vote in Syria and all of that, the vote for Syria. You quite rightly said, my friend, that what he really wants to do is brutalise the Kurds who are fighting ISIS.
Well, that seems to be his modus operandi. He's got the Turkmen doing it from one side, he's doing it from another, he's financing ISIS. He just, genuinely isn't keen on the Kurds.
No, he isn't.
He's not a big fan.
No, he isn't.
And what he'd really like to do is carry out a massive genocide, which Turkey have never carried out. We don't talk about Armenia. No, we just don't do that.
We just don't do it.
They get annoyed. They get very
People
cross.
get annoyed. And there you have, Hayden. There you have it in a nutshell, going back to Jeremy Corbyn, Corbyn could have used his allotted 10 minutes to say, holy shit, folks, Do you realise what's going on there?
It would have been the obvious thing, wouldn't it?
And he didn't.
Yeah, if we stopped to consider we could financially strangle ISIS by just, saying to Turkey maybe a little hint of, you're out of NATO, Chuck.
You're out of NATO. None of this European Union. Look, now I've got problems with all that, but we're not going to get into that, right? But yeah, that in a fair and just world, that's what would have happened.
Surely, if you strangled them financially, you would cripple their ability to as easily communicate, to reach out, to arm, to fund all those shiny new trucks that we're not giving them. And, you would diminish their ability to strike massively. So, in effect, if you followed that, and the other countries that are supporting them, threaten them with sanctions, do all that shit that doesn't involve blowing up innocent civilians, then at the end of that, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, if there does have to be military intervention, it would be much smaller. Much smaller. People would still die. But if you had to choose between a few deaths and then years of ongoing death, you've got to choose the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
But we're not doing that because we want to bomb them.
Mate, thanks for that, because the death cult is us. We're the death cult, really. The death cult is the United States and Great Britain and France and everybody else who went into Libya 4 years ago and reduced that country to rubble. I mean, just doesn't get spoken about anymore. That's the death cult. Oh, they're queuing up to tell the truth about what's going on in Turkey. Muafak al-Rubey is an Iraqi MP and the country's former national security advisor. He is talking to Russia today. Have a look.
Last 8 months, ISIS has managed to sell what's worth $800 million worth of oil in the black market of Turkey. This is Iraqi oil and Syrian oil, and these are carried by trucks from Iraq, from Syria, through the borders to Turkey, and sold in a less than 50% of the international oil price. So it's always sold. It has been always sold in the region of $20 to $21, $22 for the barrel. Now this either get consumed inside the crude is refined in the Turkish territory by the Turkish refineries and sold in the Turkish market, or it goes to Jihan and then in the pipelines from Jihan to the Mediterranean and sold to the international market.
$800 million worth of oil for less than half the price. I'm always looking for an idea for business. My bank manager would love that, as a business plan. Buy oil that's worth $800 million for less than $400 million and then sell it on. It's a marvellous plan, I mean, this was earlier in the week, where was Corbyn? Corbyn was nowhere. Like I said, there was enough evidence right there to immediately suspend any vote on attacking Islamic State. How can you justify it when your NATO ally, your important partner, is funding him? But Corbyn was pathetic. it was left to Angus Robertson of the SNP to ask pertinent questions, this being one.
Wake, would you clarify for every member of the House the advice that he's been given and others have been given in relation to the 70,000 forces that he speaks of? How many of those 70,000 are classified as moderate, and how many of them are classified as fundamentalists who we can never work with?
Well, on the 70,000, the advice I have is that the majority are made up of Free Syrian Army. But of course, the Free Syrian Army has different leadership in different parts of the country. The 70,000 excludes those in extremist groups like Al-Nusra that we will not work with. But as I said very clearly, I'm not arguing that the 70,000 are ideal partners. Some of them do have views that we don't agree with. But the definition of the 70,000 is those people that we have been prepared to work.
This is a monumental lie. And Cameron knows he's lying. This is the world we're living in. This is the fucking paradigm we exist in. He should immediately be impeached for bringing the House into disrepute. There are not 70,000 moderate, trustworthy guys there, ready to jump in after we carpet bomb black holes in the desert. They don't exist. How do we know this? How do we know Cameron is lying? Well, the old joke is when he opens his mouth. Oh Christ, look at this from CNN from around about 2 months ago. Have a look.
A shocking admission by the U.S. general running the war against ISIS. How few U.S.-trained Syrian rebels are left.
It's a small number, and the ones that are in the fight is we're talking four or five. So.
As I see it right now, this 4 or 5 U.S.-trained fighters, let's not kid ourselves, that's a joke.
What a joke! General Lloyd Austin. Mother of Jesus. I tell you what, Aidan, how you sit at a congressional hearing and manage to not look embarrassed when the congresswoman says, "Now, General, how many men have you trained and armed with all that money we gave you?" 4 or 5.
Yeah, but you should see them. I mean, we're not just talking regular. These are proper geezers. They're going to take the fight. Yeah, no, it's not. Not done very well.
It's not good, is it?
No. 4 is a little less. I'm not brilliant at maths. I will admit, maths has never been my strongest subject, but I'm pretty sure 4 is a little less than 70,000.
And again, nobody asked the Prime Minister to give way.
No, well, no one asked him. These 70,000, which apparently must outnumber ISIS, why haven't they defeated ISIS? And the answer is because they're all too busy fighting each other.
Yes.
The disparate groups of people, and they assume because they don't like ISIS, they're our friends. I doubt it.
Thanks, mate. Corbyn could have raised all these points, demanded the immediate resignation of the Prime Minister for trying to rush the country to war based on a pack of lies. But Corbyn didn't. And the result of these lies, the consequences, well, thousands of innocent men, women and children will die for a pack of lies. Where have we heard that before? Folks, I'm going to say it once. I'm not going to say it once. I'm going to say it for the 500th time. The Arab Spring was orchestrated, was planned, funded and controlled by the CIA, MI5 and Mossad with the help of Syria and Turkey. With the help of Saudi Arabia and Turkey. Not with Syria and Turkey. That's how the Arab Spring came to be. There was no spontaneous and genuine rebellion by the Syrian people. There wasn't. It's a massive lie. Am I saying that everybody in that country was happy with life under the Assad dynasty? No, I'm not. Nobody's happy anywhere. I'm not happy under the Cameron dynasty. But I'm not trying to orchestrate a coup against the government either. Watch Roland Dumas, the former French foreign minister. In fact, he worked under François Mitterrand.
Purger, puis c'est ce qu'on entend sur le plateau. Oui. Vous êtes d'accord avec ce côté binaire ou c'est plus compliqué que cela?
C'est très compliqué du fait de l'agrégation de tout le monde qui est là, c'est évident. Mais en substance, c'est ça. C'est deux camps qui s'affrontent. Moi, je vais vous dire quelque chose. J'étais il y a 2 ans à peu près avant que les hostilités commencent en Syrie. Je me trouvais en Angleterre par hasard pour d'autres choses, pas du tout de la Syrie. J'ai rencontré des responsables anglais, et quelques-uns qui sont mes amis m'ont avoué, en me sollicitant, qu'il se préparait quelque chose en Syrie. C'était en Angleterre et pas en Amérique. L'Angleterre préparait l'invasion des rebelles en Syrie. Et on m'a même demandé à moi, sous le prétexte que j'étais ancien ministre des Affaires étrangères, si je participerais comme ça. J'ai évidemment dit le contraire. J'ai dit, écoutez, moi, je suis français, ça ne m'intéresse pas. Mais c'est pour dire que cette opération vient de très loin. Elle a été préparée, conçue, organisée.
Dans quel but, hein? Excusez-moi, dans quel but? L'idée de renverser Bachar, c'était quoi le but? La finalité?
Mais dans le but très simple, de destituer le gouvernement syrien, parce que dans la région, il est important de savoir que ce régime syrien a des propos anti-israéliens. Et que par conséquent, tout ce qui bouge dans la région autour, moi j'ai la confidence du Premier ministre israélien qui remonte très longtemps, qui m'avait dit on essaiera de s'entendre avec le Premier ministre, avec les États autour. Et ceux qui ne s'entendront pas, on les abattra. C'est une politique, c'est une conception de l'histoire. Pourquoi pas, après tout? Mais il faut le savoir.
Frédéric.
Planned years before the alleged uprising in 2011. And 2011, of course, is a red letter year for the cabal. Because while that was going on, they were levelling Libya, reducing it to rubble. It's a failed state now. By anybody's intelligence, or by any man's opinion, by any reasonable man's opinion, a breeding ground for lunatics now. Right? What else could it be? Oh, Jesus. We learned today. In fact, I'm going to read it for you now. This is kind of unplanned. All the newspapers today in Britain, as Hayden and myself are talking in the run-up to the programme, the British Prime Minister has announced is that at least £1 billion from taxpayers' money will go to fund the reconstruction of Syria after it has been pummeled by British bombs. Here you go, Hayden. You see, it's the same script over and over again.
It's awfully good.
That's right. And what's going on behind the scenes, which the newspapers are not going to talk about, are not going to investigate, is that the same firms are going to get the contracts.
You know, even if they didn't want to cover
big
all
contracts.
Even if they didn't want to cover, because you know me, Mr. Devil's Advocate. But if they didn't want to cover that for whatever reason, couldn't they just say it's going to cost about 172 billion for this bombing campaign? Estimate.
172 billion. That's right. To bomb the place.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
to bomb it flat over the coming 18 months, I guess. Then we got the rebuild. I've got kids starving here. Bombing ISIS isn't going to help those kids. Let's face it, bombing ISIS, language, isn't going to help anybody. It's not going to stop attack. If there's any more attacks here in Europe, and there will be, they're already here. They're not waiting on orders from there. They'll be here. They'll have cash. They'll be ready to go. As if the cash comes from Syria, you know, probably comes from Turkey. We've got all this shit going on here.
It's crazy.
Where we've got no money. We've got no money for anything. They closed the carbon capture program down. No money for that, even though brilliant scheme. Whether you believe in global warming or not, brilliant scheme. No money for that. Bombs though, oh yeah.
No money to feed the homeless and the hungry, but money for war every single time.
Every time, mate.
Sinister aspect of all this is Cameron calling people terrorist sympathisers, but an even more sinister aspect is that those people who are pissed off with those MPs who voted for the bombing are being labelled bullies. And this sounds harmless, this. It isn't. This is part of the agenda to criminalise dissent. Listen to Labour MP, 23-year Labour MP. Am I right in saying that, or is it 17? Is it 17? 23? 23. 23 years Labour MP, Anne Coffey, complaining about being trolled on Twitter. She voted for the war. Have a listen.
They varied, I mean, for being so abusive I can't possibly repeat them, to just the usual abuse, warmonger, killer of babies, blood on your hands, sort of daily abuse, really.
Two of them that I've looked at, intriguingly, say, and I think we can put them up on the screen, one says, "You have blood on your hands, you terrorist," and another says, "You are a terrorist, you have blood on your hands." That may be coincidental or it may be coordinated.
Well, you notice certain catchphrases returning, which builds into the particular abusive words that you use, and this warmonger, blood on your hands, runs through a lot of these abusive emails. It's definitely, it's definitely the abuse.
To try and label the term warmonger or terrorist as bullying is a disgrace. It doesn't get any more Orwellian than that. And that's what's coming down the line, that. The criminalisation of having a go at somebody on social media who fucking deserves it. Because if you voted yes on Wednesday night, you are a criminal, you are a warmonger, and you are a terrorist. Ask the people on the end of those bombs in Raqqa what they would call you. The fascism described by Tony Benn is right here and right now and flourishing in this country. There is no longer even the pretense that we live in a democratic state, while 80% of the Labour Party members are ignored, while the Blairites can stick their fingers up at their own base, and while David Cameron can label somebody who disagrees with him a terrorist sympathiser. It's a disgrace. I'm going to show you one last clip. This is of the great Howard Zinn, the great academic, who's sadly no longer with us. And this is Matt Damon reading from Zinn, basically laying it on the line as to what's going on and what can be done about it. Have a look.
Our problem is civil obedience. Our problem is the numbers of people all over the world who have obeyed the dictates of the leaders of their government and have gone to war. And millions have been killed because of this obedience. We recognize this for Nazi Germany. We know that the problem there was obedience, that the people obeyed Hitler. People obeyed. That was wrong. They should have challenged, and they should have resisted. And if we were only there, we would have showed them. Even in Stalin's Russia, we can understand that. People are obedient. All these herd-like people. Remember those bad old days when people were exploited by feudalism? Everything was terrible in the Middle Ages. But now we have Western civilization, the rule of law. The rule of law has regularized and maximized the injustice that existed before the rule of law. That is what the rule of law has done. When in all the nations of the world, the rule of law is the darling of the leaders and the plague of the people, we ought to begin to recognize this. We have to transcend these national boundaries in our thinking. Nixon and Brezhnev have much more in common with one another than we have with Nixon. J. Edgar Hoover has far more in common with the head of the Soviet secret police than he has with us. It's the international dedication to law and order that binds the leaders of all countries in a comradely bond. That's why we're always so surprised when they get together. They smile, they shake hands, they smoke cigars. They really like one another, no matter what they say.
Unlike so many other academics we could mention who talked the talk but never walked the walk, the same could not be said about the great Howard Zinn. Look him up, read him. You know, you can still buy books written by him, you can still read speeches given by him. Non-violent civil disobedience, it worked for Gandhi, it worked for others. It's the only way out, but it's probably not going to happen in the short term. That was the Richie Allen Television Show in association with BeyondVision.tv and DavidIke.com for Friday, December the 4th, 2015. Hayden, thank you for your contribution, my friend. Always good. Thanks for the editing and the post-production as well. The programme will return next Friday at the same time. Until then, bye for now.